Hello, this is Kuhio Vogeler with the Kiwani Foundation, bringing you another segment of Voice of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future. And here, once again, fortunately, able to catch up with Kuhio Vogeler. Aloha, Kuhio.
Oh, aloha,
Good
aloha.
to see you.
Oh, it's always great to see you.
Thank you so much for coming in to spend some time with us.
Oh, mahalo.
Last minute deal, but we wanted to see if we could kind of catch up with what you've been doing. We want to help to promote the videos that you're doing, which I understand are pretty good. Pretty good.
Thank you.
What is the name of
The show is called The Hawaiian State of Mind.
Hawaiian State of Mind?
And the idea is that we begin the show with occupation news, which is an update of how things are changing, how this occupation or this information about occupation is changing. Then we have people on the street interviews in between the segments, and then we'll delve into some particular topic that relates either to occupation or to Hawaiian expression, or it could be both. But so the idea is to get different perspectives, but to show how all of these different perspectives are helping to move things forward in one way or another.
So you interview on the streets, and then you have kind of like a panel discussion or pretty much one-on-one?
Often one-on-one, but it just depends. Recently I had Umi Perkins and Amy DeRusso, and she was Peruso, and they spoke about what's being taught in the high schools as far as occupation. So they were able to explain that what they're teaching in their classes, but they also were able to explain that other classes are beginning to bring in this idea of occupation. So it's not just two. It's more than that.
Well, I was pretty amazed at some of the at some publications that have come out, you know, from mainstream Hawaii educators. And when I opened up the books, and they're pretty comprehensive, I was pretty amazed at how factual, legally they were based. I mean, it's really right on, and it's like how this information is coming in through the public school system. And I was just very pleased to see that this kind of level of discussion and sharing of information was going on, you know, at that point in the educational system. Never realized it before, but there's an awful lot that's been written curriculum-wise and research information that's really right on. I mean, it's right up with the stuff that we're doing currently, you know.
And there's also a change that's also taking place with new and very, very, very new information affecting the DOE and affecting how schools are covering Hawaiian studies and so forth.
Yeah, well, it's in this time of the budget cuts and the cut back on hours and so forth, that we can still make some progress. It's a good thing. Anything specific come to mind you're talking about? I mean, you mentioned that you're talking in the community, doing interviews with people on evolving information on occupation. And what's the level of awareness of people you're talking to on the streets?
It's interesting. What's happening is that people are saying that, from what I'm hearing, talking with friends and other folks, is that the idea of occupation is starting to settle in. People aren't using the concept of colonization as much as they used to. They're saying occupation, but what's happening is people are asking, so what does that mean? You know, what does that mean to the legislature here? What does that mean to Hawaii, for Hawaii's future? And they're asking, what do we do? And there's different answers. We have to end this occupation. We have to work together. We have to coordinate this effort, and we all have a role.
We have to make it happen. It
takes that idea of kuleana and you know, gives it a real personal feeling, but also in terms of Hawaiian Kingdom subjects, Hawaiian Kingdom citizens, that idea applies to everybody. And so it's not, we can't just hand it over to some organization and say, okay, you guys, you take care of it. And so
check in with us and let us know what's happening.
So people are asking, what do we do next? And in some cases, they're being told, just wait. And But what's also happening is that there's a sense of, but I want to do something.
Right.
And when I'm doing presentations, you know, I point that out. But it's also there's an undercurrent that if the responsibility is on us to actually carry this through to end the occupation, there's this underlying sense of fear.
Yeah. What happens? What happens if we do this or don't do this, or what if we do something out of order?
That aspect of it, and there's also this idea, there's something that's comforting in saying, hey, you guys do it.
You take care of it.
You take care of it for us. You go and, you know, you folks have been around for a while. You take care of all of this. Then we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But if you start talking about it, saying, no, it's our responsibility. We all have a part to play. We all have to do something.
That exceeds most people's comfort level.
Yes.
And that's where the challenge comes. For the most part, the academics say, we can do the research, we can kind of put thoughts in order, but it's up to you folks to make things happen, you know. I mean, when we look at the legal aspects and the law and the historical facts, you know, it's almost like everything is cut and dried, but things aren't happening because there isn't the political will or the momentum, you know, to get things moving. And I guess when people say, what should we be doing? I guess the answer is you should be doing what you're driven to do, you know, whatever that is. You know, it's kind of like what we do with this Voice of Truth program, is just try to emphasize just how many things are being done by so many individuals in the community and groups, but that it's individuals or groups of individuals or families who are making things happen just because they have a compulsion to do it, you know, a drive to make it happen. I think it's because of the scale of things, it's beneficial to us if we can kind of coordinate some of this, and that gets a little complicated. But there is no easy answer, except that you need to do what you're pushed to do, whatever your kuleana is, you know.
Yes, and you know, I've talked before about those 5 steps. You know,
why don't you repeat those again?
Yeah, the gaining awareness that it is the idea of occupation that's affecting all these things: culture, language, jobs, all of these things. And then the second step, and there has been a shift. People have said that we've shifted from being on that first step to being on the beginning of that second step.
Really?
And the second step is where there's these changes in political groups and mass political participation, and that's where the educators and that's where the academics become involved in the beginning of that second step, where this information is broken down into little pieces, and then there's the third step of the infiltration of the political system. The fourth step, the registering of the electorate. You know, anyone who could trace their ancestry, whether they're Hawaiian or Chinese or French or whatever, to before January 16th, 1893, Hawaiian nationals. And then the fifth step, putting together that legislature from those people who had registered from the fourth step. So if we're looking at that, we're at that transition between the first and the second step, and that's where that idea of momentum comes in.
Right.
Now, what happens in that idea of momentum is it's making it something that people participate in, and that's a shift in thinking. Right. Because what has
not observing, it's actually becoming involved in.
Yes, and what's taken place so far, what's gotten us to where we're at, is people have done wonderful work, consistently doing things like for Kamehameha Day, or for La Ho'iho'i'ea, or for La Ku'oko'a, or any of these things, or the events that took place back in '93.
Commemorative things, yeah.
Right, but the change is that this has to be a change in focus and a change in numbers, so that these, whether it's La Ho'iho'i'ea, it's looking at how can we get larger participation. At McKinley statue, there's these signs that were put up there, and now on Kamehameha Day, there's going to be an opportunity for a donation box. And they may even have some signs that are not completed so
Well,
people can add names.
I understand they're looking for more. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But anything...
Names from the Kuhio petitions.
From the Kuhio petitions,
Right.
from those petitions of people who protested annexation
Right.
100
Right.
and whatever years ago.
Right.
If people donate, if people are able to put names of their ohana, then they're participating in this process. It's not something where...
It's personalizing it.
It's personalizing it.
Yeah.
And that's the change that needs to take place. Because that's, once you personalize this,
Right.
and you make this something that you're doing for your family, for your future, then that makes a difference. And also there's looking at it in terms of the overall strategy. Like for instance, we were talking about this court case that's going up to that's suing Obama and so forth.
Right.
It's on behalf of a Hawaiian Kingdom subject. Well, what about all Hawaiian Kingdom subjects? What about all of them?
Class action suit.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Because once you have people participating and a coordinated effort where someone is taking on this role, someone's taking on this role, someone's taking on another role, if you can coordinate that, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And that's also that these fears that people have, to address those fears is also powerful.
Well, and to deal with those fears from a broad base of support, like family support, friends. I mean, it's a lot easier to deal with if you know you've got people to your left and to your right and behind you, alongside you, than going at it solo, you know.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Because if you have individuals going at it solo, they're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you have people getting together and saying, okay, we have these fears, how do we run a country? I mean, really, that's the question you're asking. And that's where a lot of that fear comes from, is how do you really run a country? And to be able to say, okay, what are some of those fears and how can some of those fears be addressed? And it's a numbers game, but it's not a numbers game. What I mean is this, is that if you have a small group of people that are willing to put their egos aside and willing to come together and talk about this ending the occupation, not my group is the group, and all these other groups are just are just not valid. As long as you're coming at it that way, then that's just going to dissect everything, and it's not going to move things forward.
Yeah, fractious.
But if people are and this is different than what's taken place before, because we've had Sovereignty Elections Committee, all of these things, but none of these so far have been directed at ending an occupation and running a country. And by acknowledging what people's fears are, and by addressing those, first having a small group put together a strategy, or a group to put together a strategy, and then whether it's through Hawaiian civic clubs or through Royal Order of Kamehameha or through Kamehameha schools in the Baltic states, because that's my my research.
Right, sure.
It was these cultural groups where most of these fears were addressed, and that offered the opportunity for people to become closer. So you have a strategy that can be put together by as few as 10, 20, 30 people just all working and committed. But then you also have the integration of this into these Hawaiian civic clubs, into these other organizations, so that people can discuss their fears and say, hey, how can we deal with this? Do we really have to go back to 1864 law, like some people say, and we can't have something in between? So, to me, that makes it a participatory action and
ownership
and a group action. The court case, some people see that as kind of a cattle prod, as a wake-up call to say, hey, we should do things now. And in doing those things, we have to acknowledge those fears that people have.
If you're looking at your 5 steps, and we're transferring from one to the second, traveling from one to the second. I mean, it doesn't mean that the other three aren't at some level of development too. I mean, it's not like one complete, two complete, then before you go to three, but things have to be happening all the way across the board and moving forward. You talk about cultural groups in the Balkans.
Baltic states.
Baltic states. Could you, what would you equate those to here in Hawaii? Halau, perhaps? Or?
Sure, halau is a great example.
Yeah.
Ohana. You can have discussions in Ohana. There was I was talking with someone about whether it was these plaques or whatever, having Ohana or halau or whatever, sponsoring them or sponsoring a sign or sponsoring something where they're participating in it, so that you have it. It's taking it from the individual to the small group,
right.
And by taking it from the individual to the small group, if you can do that with, say, 200 people,
right.
and increase that tenfold, that's 2,000 people. If you can increase that 100-fold, that's 20,000 people. So,
and have the various groups, or the Ohana or the Halau, then collaborating and expanding even more broadly then, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in the Baltic states, they were able to do that by allowing people to have their concerns and to have their fears, but by discussing it and talking it through and saying, hey, we can do this, we can do this together, and it's valid to have those concerns.
What kind of groups were working together in the Balkan states? A range, just this whole range, similar to what we've just been talking about, or when you say it was this sharing and airing of fears and dealing with them. Okay, we talked about halau here. What kind of groups were there? Families, I guess. Families, maybe political groups. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. With the Baltic states,
Right.
with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
Right.
Well, with Lithuania in particular, it was actually the Sąjūdis, which was an organization or a group of organizations that were formed from Perestroika and Glasnost, and they were actually cultural organizations that took off. When you bring things to Hawaii, you have some aspects deal with the university. So there's an aspect that deals with the university that can discuss these things and move things forward. But like anything, if it gets bogged down saying that this particular organization or this particular person is the one, the
Messiah,
right, or anything like that, then that's going to that can stifle things, and that can stifle discussion.
And people will kind of pull back away from that.
And people will pull back, and people will begin to leave such organizations because they realize that this isn't looking out for Hawaiian Kingdom subjects as a whole group. But if you can, whether it's at the university, whether it's halau, any of these can be anywhere that these ideas can be discussed, and that this can be worked through, then it can move forward. It's not trying to really convince people, but it's trying to say, hey,
it's okay to talk about it.
It's okay to talk about it, and if this were put on you, because really this is put on us, how would you do it? How would you run your own country, this Hawaii? You got to go back to the old laws, and you got to figure out which ones to pull forward. But how would you begin to address those nitty-gritty questions? And that's the responsibility of all of us.
Yeah, begin, because obviously it's going to be an evolutionary thing, go on forever.
Sure. Eventually, it may be, talking about things like how would you put together a legislature? How would you go and elect a body to go and fill in for this legislature?
Right.
In Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, in Estonia and Latvia, they actually had two legislatures working at the same time. But what happened is in Estonia there was a written agreement that the Soviet legislature, I'll call it that, it's kind of redundant, but the Soviet legislature, that would coordinate with the other legislature because they knew that they were the legitimate legislature. You know, the Estonian People's Congress is what they called it. Yeah. In Latvia, there wasn't any written agreement, but many people working in one also worked in the other. So because there was a similarity of ideas, whatever the Latvian People's Congress did, the other legislature listened to it.
And who was, during that period of transition, when did the full authority transfer from one to the other? I mean, one displaced the other, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, yes. It was a specific date.
Oh, it was, so there was a date,
Yeah.
a date set.
Yeah, it was for Estonia. It was August 21st, 1991. For Latvia, it was August 22nd, 1991. So you had a specific date, but there was a whole transitionary period. In Lithuania, it happened in one day.
Yeah.
And it can happen in one day if it's planned out well enough.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. I'd like to see that happen. But I'm thinking about it, and we're right now we're here at the state capitol.
Sure.
All right, so we've got the Senate on that side, and we have the House on this side. And I guess what we would need to do would be to organize and unify a body to be contended with that could essentially move in and start making its impact felt within the existing structure to the extent that they became a part of it, a part of the lawmaking, interpretation, and all of that. And it would have to be sufficient enough and powerful enough and dedicated enough to essentially work towards displacing what's currently in place.
Yes, it's odd to think about, but with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, many of the changes that took place in the transition were done by the Supreme Soviets of those countries, by the legislatures under the Soviet Union of those countries. So,
and they did that because
they understood that the place was occupied, and they understood that they needed to do what was right. And so you actually have people here that have already learned of this idea of occupation, that are senators, that are in the House of Representatives. And as people learn about these ideas, they become incorporated, especially if you can have huge demonstrations that have a large participation of the population.
Critical mass.
A critical mass, because those numbers count in two ways. One, in those mass demonstrations, and two, the numbers count in how you tally the number of Hawaiian Kingdom subjects.
Right.
How you include them in the process.
Yeah, and just how broad is the support and the participation. You've got to be able to assign numbers to them. You have to be able to have names to go with the numbers and faces to go with the names.
Sure. I mean, you have some of these organizations right now that are saying, we have 4,000 signatures, and therefore our organization is the real government of Hawaii.
Right.
Well, 4,000 compared to a total of, say, maybe 500,000, if you're talking about Hawaiian Kingdom subjects worldwide, or maybe more than that. So 4,000, that's a few, you know. But even more so, you have some organizations that are saying, we have this really cool legal argument, and therefore, because we have this really cool legal argument, we can supersede the will of the Hawaiian Kingdom subjects. Because our legal argument is so cool, then we can go and step in, and there's nothing that the Hawaiian Kingdom subjects can do. But guaranteed, if you got the Hawaiian Kingdom subjects, and they're tallied together, and they go and put together a legislature that goes and is reacting to and enacting the will of the people, going back to the laws, the whole world is going to listen to these guys. I don't care who the other folks are.
I'm all for that, and what I want to see is this increase in mass, increase in critical mass, increase in actually motivation for the benefit of the whole, you know. it's to me it is about a unifying thing.
Yes,
yes. Not a one-man show.
No.
And so our time is coming to a close here, but we want to encourage everyone to take a look at the banner so that they can see where to get in touch with you, read your writings. I don't think we have any problem with the moving forward together. It's quite a teamwork effort. It's just that we've got to get more people in the team, and the various teams moving together with the same goal in mind.
Yeah, and take off our individual hats and work together, not just for our organization, but for actually ending this occupation.
And personally, I'm always optimistic, and I'm feeling that we're miles ahead of where we have been, so it's all good for me. Mahalo again, Kuhio, thanks for being with us. Those of you tuning in out there and watching, keep in touch with what's happening and get yourself a piece of the action or development. Be a part of the solution. Because if you're not doing something positive, you're part of the problem. Nothing personal, but that's the way I feel. I'm Kuhio Vogeler with the Kiwani Foundation, one-on-one with Voice of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's Future, segment of the Free Hawaii Broadcasting System. Mahalo and hui hou.
Mahalo for watching Voices of Truth one-on-one with Hawaii's Future. Watch us on the web 24/7 at voicesoftruthtv.com. You'll find all our shows, including this one, in case you want to see it again or share it with family and friends. Also view our weekly video commentaries at freehawaiitv.com. And check out our blog, published daily, at freehawaii.info. It's all part of the Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.